Hi, and welcome to House and Home Chat Real Estate Real Talk with Dena and Chris. I'm Dena Chris.
And I'm Chris Breitenbach. We are very excited to be at Drishtiq Yoga Studio in Mason, Ohio today, where we're going to chat about mindfulness in business and in life. A little later in Real Talk, Dena and I will share 5 causes of anxiety for buyers and for sellers. Hence the reason we need mindfulness in our lives.
Exactly, and that's why we're happy to be chatting it up with Amy Vetter today. Amy is the owner of the Drishtiq Yoga Studio here in Mason, Ohio, but Amy's not just a yoga studio owner. She's an artist, she's an author, she has her own podcast program that she hosts, the Breaking Beliefs program, and she's also a national keynote speaker specializing in the area of mindfulness. So we're really excited to have you
thanks for having
here
me.
with us today, Amy.
Yeah, very
Amy,
excited
thank
to be here.
you. We, again, welcome to our program today. Dena and I always like to ask our guests to share a little bit about themselves and their story with our listeners to begin.
There's a lot there.
Where to begin?
And I'm so fascinated.
So I actually grew up here in Cincinnati. I went to Sycamore High School, University of Cincinnati, and I was an accountant. I still am. I'm just not a practicing accountant, CPA. And I really started my journey as a CPA basically because my grandfather had been a CPA, and that's what I heard about growing up.
So it was in the family business, huh?
Yeah.
In the family blood.
He was an immigrant, and they lived in St. Paul, Minnesota, and so the stories were always how when he became a CPA, it started helping the rest of the family and future generations as well. The CPA profession was very different at that time. Obviously, it was before, public company, SEC, all the regulation that accountants deal with now. So he would, stories I heard was like he'd barter, fur coats for my mom to, basically do the return.
Well, that's a nice word.
The trade, the chickens.
Yeah. So it was very immigrant, bring the community together, everyone, try to help one another.
That's a good story,
So my mom did not decide to go into accounting, and I think she was always sorry she hadn't, because she ended up opening a business when I was in 2nd grade. It was a maid service, and she had 3 locations, and I started working in her business probably at 12 years old. I was getting dropped off on the bus and
family business, right?
What part of that were you doing?
Well, I was doing the office work. So I actually answered the phones. I did got the maids' work orders ready for the next day, did the deposit slips.
Organization.
All the, back office stuff. And I really got the passion for entrepreneurship young, because she would take me to trade shows and Chamber of Commerce. And I mean, as you guys know, at that time, women weren't necessarily seen the way I was living and seeing my mom have a business
be her business
see her get involved with politics and stuff like that. So I started, early on just asking. She was part of the apartment association on the vendor side. And so I started asking other people that she networked with, like, what would you be when you grow up? What should I do when I am in college? And so at the time I played violin, viola, I painted.
Oh, I forgot. Musician too.
Musician.
How could I forget that?
Yeah.
She's at the School of Rock, jamming it out on stage. Yes. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Add that to the list.
So, this was a real crossroads in my life, because I was a creative. At 16 years old, though, when the savings and loan crisis happened, my mom lost everything. She was, her residential cleaning company grew to start doing, restoration, smoke restoration, construction
she
cleanup.
Had to branch out.
And with that, for anyone that's moves into that, you get paid in arrears versus at time of service.
Okay.
And so when that fell through, literally she lost everything because people weren't paying, and she still had to pay her employees, and she really made a choice of, do I pay my employees or do I pay my payroll taxes? And she paid her employees. So we had to sell our house, we had to sell everything inside of our house. So that was really a turning point in my life of like, I never want that to happen. So I was like, I'm going to be a CPA. I had no idea what a CPA actually did, but I was saying I was going to be a CPA from a young age.
Follow that path.
Yes.
Got it.
So I was part of the Cincinnati Youth Symphony Orchestra growing up, so I got a real feel for what it was like to be a musician, and I just took the path of that.
That's a really cool backstory, but like, how did you migrate from CPA to this mindfulness expert? Exactly.
Well, so the thing was that, when you're younger and you're making decisions like this, I never questioned my decisions. I worked really hard. I was on my track to be a partner in a CPA firm, and worked and worked and worked. And at 32 years old, which is kind of young to become a CPA firm partner, I became a partner. And when that happened, I was also, my son that works at the studio that we were just talking about, he was just born. So I was going through some medical stuff from pregnancy, so I wasn't allowed to work out or do my normal stuff. And so the only thing I was allowed to do was yoga. And I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh.
I was a type A personality. And
you're like,
that
was sitting with my own thoughts.
Exactly.
Never heard that before.
Yeah. And then I also started going to therapy because I was feeling really off. And it was really the first time in my life I ever questioned myself or my decisions. And at that point, the partner of the accounting firm, when I made partner, he had come into my office and said, I'm just so glad to know who I'm going to retire with one day. And I was like, Retire?
2 years old.
Exactly. So it was really one of those moments of like, I thought I would be so excited, and I just got, oh my God, is this what I want to be doing?
Yeah.
And so really it was kind of this perfect storm of pivoting my life, and it was hard work. So I think anyone that goes through a shift in their life, there's kind of two choices there. It's like you either go, Dena's been in our teacher training, and what's one of my
the Drishtiq Yoga Studio.
And one of my first warnings to the students when they come into teacher training is don't quit anything, if you remember. Because when we start feeling better, feeling good, then we're like, oh, let's just like leave everything because this feels good. And so when we go through stuff of turmoil and self-assessment, which takes a lot of courage, what happens is a lot of times we don't sit in it and find the messages. Instead, we're like, I'll just move on.
You want to exit. You want to get out of the
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's so true. Which I certainly don't know a lot about mindfulness. I know a little bit. Sounds like it's kind of my segue into that. Sounds like finding mindfulness and using mindfulness in your life.
Yeah. So, really the aspect of mindfulness is kind of twofold, and I think sometimes the term gets overused. But it is first off observing yourself and your own energy, and really kind of deciding the energy you want to create for yourself, but for also the people around you. But the second part's even harder, especially when we talk about in the workplace or around other people, is that it is a hard process to do it by yourself, but it's easier than when you go back to work and still have to be mindful and deal with other people. And you guys know, as real estate agents, like, emotions are heightened and everything else during that. So how do you apply mindfulness when you are working with other people and trying to be present. And the problem is where our mind goes, especially in those situations of transition, and what I call it is a pivot. So that's really what my life took, because when I observed everything, I was like, you know, I have so much expertise in the work that I do in accounting. So, and I really do overall love to see businesses improve, because I came from a business that failed, and as a CPA, I can help these businesses stay in business.
Right.
But what else can I do with that expertise and pivot in other areas? And that was really the journey of finding ways to not leave behind all the years and
of the CPA work, right?
But also bringing my creative side together, and you know, being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know, started a yoga studio.
Yeah. Just pile it on.
Yeah.
Amy's like your modern day Renaissance woman.
Yeah, that's good. Very good.
So Amy, how do we practice being mindful then?
So there are, you know, certain aspects. There's really 3 key things to think about. Is first, whatever situation that you're going in is getting really present. And so you've got to practice the tools to get present. So that doesn't, and I like to tell people, like, it doesn't mean that it's yoga if yoga doesn't do that for you, right? Like if it's taking a walk, if it's listening to music, if it's knitting, whatever.
Those are great suggestions.
You know, whatever works for you to kind of let your brain release and take a moment, right?
That's a great point, because when we say mindfulness, people think meditation, people think they have to be doing yoga. So that's a really good point, that it can be anything.
Yeah, so when you step back and think about, like, when does my mind just release? Like, what things do I do? And then how do I incorporate that into my day? So, you know, I suggest a lot of times to people, you know, if you're in a corporate environment, you know, I know meetings can get scheduled back to back to back to back. And I speak to a lot of real estate agents and associations as well. And so it's even if you're driving between appointments, giving yourself 5-10 minutes in your car or before you go to that next meeting to get present. So that can be that you're closing your eyes and setting an alarm on your phone just to give yourself, it just takes 2 minutes to reset your central nervous system. So that can be all you need to just kind of get yourself there. You can take some deep breaths, listen to music, whatever you need. But, you know, this has been something that more and more, like hospitals or, you know, when you've got residents that are in training,
stressed,
you know, and they don't get a break, teaching them while they scrub. How do you get present during the scrubbing process? So before you go into the next, you know, so figuring out in your day where you can do that.
You can take those moments.
The second piece is the next level is if I'm going to go into an encounter with another person, our brain is not naturally wired for presence. Our brain does 2 things. Either we have listened to stories about that person, or we have an experience in the past that we're going to apply into this, or we're like, oh my God, I've got like 3 other things I need to be doing right now, and I'm not focusing.
Yeah. Or you've got your phone in your hand, you're talking, and you're just, I don't know.
You're just staying busy instead of actually being present. And so what you've got to do is, the second piece of this is acceptance, is to accept that person as they are in that moment. So not applying a past story, not applying something you heard from somebody, but
that's a tall order.
It's a really hard thing.
And I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
I love that.
Because seeing that person as a human, just like you have different days that, you know, and if someone always has a preconceived notion of you, you're always going to line up into it, because that's the story in your head about that person. So the point of getting present is that I can see that person as they are. And the third part's even harder, is see them with compassion. So
have compassion. Children like enemies.
But the whole training is observation. So if you're alone with yourself on a walking meditation or meditating or listening to music, what you're trying to do is observe your energy, maybe how you're feeling about that person before you go into it, and how do you breathe and let it go, so that you can see them as they are in the moment, and then have compassion for whatever their perspective is, whether you agree with it or not. It's more to separate yourself as an observer and do the research. So our first, and I am like this too, it's very hard to not respond. So the whole point of an encounter with someone else is to gather information and then say, let me get back to you, let me think about it. Because a lot of times when we walk away from a situation, we find later we'll respond in a different way than we would have in the moment.
Oh,
That is so true.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. My brain is like searching, swimming, going.
Yeah.
It's all really great stuff.
And it's hard. And it's
hard.
But
it's
so
hard.
this is the thing that our mind, it's not really a muscle, but it's a muscle that we're training, right? Like, so just like you go to a yoga practice to get better at yoga, or go work out to get better at working out. Same thing with these types of things of training our minds. It takes practice. And there are days that we are not going to be perfect at it. And then it comes back to compassion for ourselves of letting that go so we can start fresh again.
The next day, the next moment.
In the next moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just.
So, okay, the why. Why is this important to us then?
Well, I just feel, and I think it's, of course, this is my own personal belief system, and also what I experience with all the people I encounter through the studio, family, friends, or whatever. We live in a world that blames the outside a lot, rather than finding where is our 100% responsibility. Right. And so, we wait for other things to make the change for us. But these practices that we do, and I'm just going to use yoga as an example because we're in my yoga studio, but we call it, your teacher training was called Living Your Yoga. It's not about just what you do in the room. It is about how you live it outside. So when I'm on my mat and practicing these things, the whole point is, how do I remember to do that during the day? So like little things are like, maybe in a yoga class, the teacher says, set an intention. Well, how many times in your workday do you actually set an intention and say, this is how I want to show up today. I want to make someone smile.
Probably
I want to
never, right?
breathe, Or, another thing I noticed when I started yoga is how much I would forget to breathe during the day. So, as the day goes on, tension keeps building, jaws are clenching, your body's getting tight.
Yeah.
All you have to do is take a couple deep breaths during the day and you're like, oh, I feel better. Right. We have these human tools, but a lot of times we just don't tap into them because we're not practicing them. And the thing is, when we, I've gone through some hard life circumstances, a lot of people have over COVID and so forth. And one thing that I realized during that time is that had I not been practicing, it's almost like an insurance policy, because when you need it, it doesn't just pop.
Yeah.
You need to be practicing these types of things every day. And then when you're under an extreme amount of stress or things that you cannot control, somehow it just starts popping in and you don't even intend, which I'm sure you've seen since you've been.
It becomes a part of who you are, right? But yeah, no, the one thing I think I underestimated more than anything going through the yoga teacher training program was the importance of the breath. And I think in any yoga class I'd ever been to, it's like nobody wants to sit with their breath for whatever reason. Right. It's just because you're stilling your thoughts and you're taking yourself inward.
Or a workout.
And moving, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to sit with that breath. And I can't tell you how much just that stepping back, taking those deep breaths, or how many times I've talked to my son. He'll text me from school and be like, I just did this test and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, where are you? I'm like, just stop, take a breath. And like, I'll, text him through it, not talk him through it, but text him through it. And it always, always works. I mean, it's something that we say, that we know, but we don't necessarily practice.
So would that be like a good starting point?
Yeah.
What would be a good starting point? And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Yeah. So it means actually slowing the breath down. So, because when our breath gets rapid or tense, it starts affecting all of our systems in the body. So, I mean, a good breath that helps with anxiety is interesting because when you cry, you go, right?
You're trying to.
So it's a natural thing that's what's helping us to calm down, is to do like 2 inhales, right? But if you can slow down the 2 inhales, like inhale and then inhale again, and then slow the exhale out for what you did the 2, that's a great starting point. And all you have to do is like 5 of those, and you will start seeing a difference in your body. The other thing I always say is the 2-minute just closing your eyes. So you just set an alarm on your phone, close your eyes, and you want to like just count your breaths to calm yourself. But it'll be amazing like how still you get just in 2 minutes when you just give yourself a moment to step away from the computer, the emails, the notifications, and just recenter. And sometimes, people will feel like, with meditation that your brain should stop. And that is not true. So we have a thinking brain, right? It actually, as a researcher and observer, gives us a ton of information about ourselves. So sometimes as the day's going on, we know we feel stressed, but we don't really know why. And when we take that couple minutes and then some emotions come up for us, we're like, oh,
that's why.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I need to let that go, so that I don't then roll into my next experience
with that whole bit of stress, anxiety, or feelings, negative feelings.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you feel like you're in a therapy session?
Blown away.
So, Amy, in this age post-COVID, and still actually going through COVID, I won't even call it post because here we are again, where so many people and so many businesses kind of came back to the home, and people's lives are so blended in family life and work. How do you maybe take time when everything seems so conjoined to experience or practice some of that, mindfulness when you're at home all day,
right?
And there's kids and pets and laundry and cooking dinner
and work and home
and yeah, exactly. It's a little bit harder to separate, maybe. What are your suggestions?
I mean, so I would come back to what can I be 100% responsible for, and that is setting boundaries. So many times we don't set the boundary. We let the day take over rather than us saying, my stop time is here.
Right.
I might come back 3 hours later and say, but between 5 and 8, that's when I'm eating, that's when I'm working out, whatever. I have worked remote most of my career. And so I have a very structured calendar to make that work. And I've also monitored where my energy levels are in the day. So like my highest energy is the morning. So if I'm going to work out or do anything, that needs to happen in the morning. And I know for me, and working out isn't always the answer for people, but for me it is, whether that's yoga or something else, it sets my mindset for the rest of the day. If I don't do it, I don't feel as good. So it's finding what those things are. Maybe it's reading, it's just taking those moments for yourself. I also know in my day that because my energy is higher, that's when I need to get my individual work done. So I got to get it done in the morning before I start having meetings with people. So I schedule most of my meetings in the afternoon because that's when my energy starts declining. But if I'm talking to other people, I can pick up the energy. I have a lot of little these B3 breaks that talk about like little things that you can do.
Part of your podcast?
No, I actually have on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist called B3 Breaks, and they're all like 3 to 5 minutes talking about these little things that you can do to really try to shift thinking and organizing your day. But also when I said, set an intention for your day, a lot of times we're really busy in the day, but at the end of the day, we're like, I don't even know what I did. Was really busy. Yeah. So, so really in the beginning of your day, setting like, these are the 1 or 2 things I must accomplish today. So at the end of the day, you're like, okay, got those done. This is what I'll do tomorrow. So like kind of just really saying like, what can I do to make sure I'm structuring my day and communicate? So this is where I think a lot of people go wrong is they don't tell their children, don't interrupt me. They're popping in or whatever.
What's the expectation?
Guilt factor.
Or the door's going off and you're not telling other people like you're in the middle of the meeting. Like having that communication back and forth with the other people in your house is like between 2 and 3, I cannot be interrupted.
Yeah, so you're setting those expectations.
Yeah.
And probably easier because in my house we have 2 of us who work from home, and like probably easier where there's just the 2 of us, right?
Well, I've had to do it with kids and everything else because they'll stand there while you're on a meeting, like, and I'm like, I can't talk right now.
The dog doesn't understand.
Yeah.
But we like, for us, like when my husband's working from home, he closes the door.
Right.
And, I know I would never walk in there anyway, but it just.
That's the time. But
it's the time.
But yeah, that's a really good point about communication is that
letting people know.
Letting people know. I mean, when I'm on my office and I'm doing whatever and dinner's supposed to be ready and it's not, and then they want to know or they're wondering, for me to take those moments to say, look, I'm on a call, dinner's going to be late, don't bother me or whatever.
Or you take care of it.
You take care of it.
So all about delegation.
Delegating.
DoorDash is your friend.
I gotcha. So yeah, I'm taking it all. I'll know how to handle.
So I love that you have resources that can help people. Any other suggestions for resources or resources you have to share?
Yeah, so I have, besides Drishtiq Yoga, obviously we have classes 7 days a week, morning through evening. So we do probably over 40 classes a week.
Tell a little bit about the types of classes that are here.
So we have everything from restorative, gentle yoga to hot power yoga. So we run the gamut in our classes. So there's something for everybody. We do meditation. Through COVID, every class is streamed virtually as well.
Right.
So through people's membership, they have the option to be in studio or to access it virtually. To work within a work day as well, not so much about COVID. Well, I guess now kind of a little bit, but
but we've all shifted the way that we do things too. So it's not a bad thing.
Where you can, find that. We actually had always planned this to be a virtual studio. It just didn't, through business stuff, kept shifting. But before COVID even happened, we were recording classes for a virtual library just for our members. So that, for our members, they have access to that virtual recorded library plus live streaming classes. And we have kids classes and teacher training for people that want to go to teacher training. My other side of me, I have a website, amyvetter.com. It really has all the resources on there. I have my podcast on there, blogs that will help. I have something called the B3 Method Institute. So the book I wrote is Business Balance and Bliss, and that's B3 Method. And so
is that where these little snippets are?
So
the Take Two.
So the B3 Method Institute, you can sign up for like 10-minute learning lessons per week that will send to you, and you kind of set an intention and start going on this path. You can get the book as well. And then there's YouTube videos on my YouTube channel with the B3 break videos as well. So lots of resources I try to provide people so that they can find something to practice and put into their lives.
Yeah.
Love it. Love that. It sounds like everybody can find something for them that's going to work in their life.
Yeah. So if it's a podcast and you just are in your car and that's what works for you, then the podcast is Breaking Beliefs. And that podcast is really kind of based on, you know, I had to break my own belief systems to make these pivots and shifts. And what we find is we have belief systems that were built from when we were young, that as we get older, we shift our perspective.
Yeah,
and so
they may or may not serve us anymore.
Right.
And so I you know, interview leaders from all over kind of talking about their journey and how they had to train themselves to get out of their comfort zone or see things differently than they were used to.
That's there's a lot of resources, and every time I talk to you or I listen to a podcast or I hear or see another snippet of something, I always learn something new.
Oh, well, thanks.
So I'm just super excited to have you here, and just like I said earlier, I'm like, I feel like I'm at therapy. Okay, what do I need to do later today? Because I've got like 12 things that you're be responsible for. So communicate, take that breath.
Well, and I'm thinking back to, okay, maybe I don't necessarily practice mindfulness, but there's things like I used to do when I went to an office every day on my drive, right? Like I never looked at my phone when I was on my drive, and I was always ready to walk in the door when I walked in the door. So I thank you, because I feel like, I really was.
I really was being mindful.
But it was in my own way.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the whole thing, I think, to your point, is that there are so many different ways for you to tap into your mindfulness. And when we say that word, people are like, think all of a sudden think meditation or yoga.
Correct.
And it doesn't have to be that.
It's just being intentional.
It's just being intentional. That's exactly right.
I love that.
So anything else closing up here, Amy, that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I appreciate you guys coming to the studio for this interview. You know, we've definitely gone through a lot of changes and effort this year to remain part of the business community, so we'd love to see new faces coming in and supporting the small business.
Tell everybody where you are here in Mason.
So we are on Snyder Road between Tylersville and Reading Road, right across from the post office.
And classes, morning classes, if you're a morning person like Amy is, that 5:30 class in the morning.
I don't make it to 5:30.
She doesn't make it.
I do the
Somebody does, right?
That's available. I tend to teach more in the evening, so join me at 6 or 4:30. But there's something for everybody here, and I love that I've found my home here at the yoga studio.
You have to.
So, so our small business shout out this week is Drishtiq Yoga in Mason, Ohio.
Come visit us here.
Amy, thank you so much. We appreciate your being here.
Thanks for having me.
Again, thank you, Amy, for joining us today. I learned so much.
I did too. I felt like I was just a sponge.
I absorbing it all. A small business shout out goes to Amy Vetter at the Drishtiq Yoga Studio. And I think she mentioned a bunch of resources where you can get on and explore the topics even further.
Yes, which I know I am looking forward to doing. So as Dena and I started our podcast, we really had 3 areas that we wanted to focus on. And one was just helping provide information to people on different topics.
Right.
Certainly providing information to you on the real estate world, facts, figures, strategies, etc. But also to celebrate our community. And just in our conversation with Amy, I'm so reminded of what a way to celebrate a small business and having those small business shout outs that we try to do every episode.
Exactly. So that's a big part of our platform, is sharing our community. So we thank Amy, and come see us here at Drishtiq.
Yeah, absolutely.
So turning it over to real talk, looking back at the real estate part of our program, and something you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast was anxiety.
Yes.
And did you know that moving is actually one of the top causes of people and their anxiety?
You know, I can understand it, right? It is, first off, most people move due to life changes one way or another.
Right.
And so you have something coupled with the fact that I call it a procedure, right?
Yes, it can be overwhelming, it can be anxiety-full, and that's where the whole mindfulness, practicing what some of the things that Amy taught us to do can really help with that.
We're all going to start doing 2 breaths in and a slow breath out. You know, let's start with a buyer. So we thought we would just share 5 areas of anxiety for both a buyer and a seller. And, you know, for a buyer, I think that oftentimes they're overwhelmed with with that procedure, what those tasks are for both buying a house and getting to the closing table and the whole loan process. So
there's a lot of steps, right?
A lot of little steps, and they're so afraid, I think, that they're going to miss something. And you know, I know with their loan process, if they're getting a loan, I oftentimes just say, you know what, do whatever your loan officer asks, and trust me, if they're asking for the W-2 5 times, don't question it, don't question yourself, just do it. And some of that is we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but you know, when someone new sees a file, they ask you, rather than look through the file, they're going to ask you for it. It's easier. Just go with it. But it is overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, and I think a big piece of being overwhelmed is because you don't understand the process, or you don't understand all the steps. And you become anxious about what you don't know, right?
Right. And even if you've purchased a couple of homes in your past or sold a couple of homes in your past, it changes. Yeah. And so you don't understand the process.
Yeah, it could be 10 years, things change. I mean, time passes between, and you forget things also. So we're here to help you through those anxiety points and steps, right?
Hey, one cause of anxiety is the big one, and that is the amount of money involved.
Oh,
right.
For sure.
Houses are expensive. This is money, and it's hard for us to oftentimes even comprehend what 100,000, 500,000 even looks like, and yet those are amounts we might be talking about with purchasing a home.
Yeah, it's the largest investment that most people or many people will ever make. So that in and of itself is a scary thing to embark. But yeah, it's just a process. Getting all those steps laid out in front of you can really help you, I think, move past some of those points of anxiety.
Comfort.
Exactly. So another thing, I think where people set themselves up maybe a little bit for some anxiety is putting pressure on themselves to find that dream home.
Oh, definitely, right?
You got to find that perfect house.
And you know what? It doesn't exist.
Right. Or what's perfect today may not be for you tomorrow, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, today you might have exactly in your head what you want or whatever. But you know what? We change. We change. Our lives change. Everything is always evolving. And so when I say there's no perfect house, it might be for a moment, but we need to grow with it.
Right, exactly. So take that pressure off yourself. Yeah. You know, that dream home, you'll make that dream home. You'll create that dream home out of whatever
the lives that you're having.
Whatever home you buy, you'll create that life, that dream life for yourselves. Yeah, that's a great point.
You know, another area is as buyers find issues with the home, whether that be prior to your closing on it or after the fact, right? So you have a home inspection and things that have gone wrong, and what does that mean, and do we read more into it, and we just start to analyze it more and more, or
over anticipating things that might happen. You just can't put that kind of stress on yourself, right?
You can't. And you know what? I hate to say welcome to home ownership.
Joys of home ownership, right?
But things are going to go wrong with your home. It is a thing, and things break.
Things break, exactly.
So that's just a couple of the buyer ones.
Yeah.
Dena, what are some of the ones about it for a seller?
Well, I think one of the big ones is price. Am I going to get the price that it's listed for,
Mm-hmm.
or how should I price it? Am I asking enough? Am I not? Am I asking too much? And what will somebody pay for my home? So I think there's a lot of anxiety that people build themselves around price, not leaving money on the table, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, with a seller, there's a lack of control and a lack of unknown. And one of those is, will it sell on my time frame? And whether that be the getting a contract. You know, Dena and we've talked about how fast our market is.
Right.
But it's not fast for every single home.
Right.
And so as a seller, you've got an unknown there. And will it close in the time frame that I want it to close in as a seller?
Exactly. It might sell in a day. It might sell in 30 days. So as a seller, you have a little less control over the timeline there. And that can cause some anxiousness, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So another source of anxiety for a seller, I think, once they're under contract, they're always anxious about whether or not that sale is going to go through. Like what happens next? And on the seller side, they get to a point where they're kind of in a waiting pattern for all the buy side, you know, the mortgage lending stuff to happen. And so they're always anxious about whether or not the sale is going to fall through.
Yeah. You know, idle. The seller in a lot of steps are idle in the process while the buyer's going through their inspection periods and their loan process. And so you're just sitting there, and if you're like me, that mind just continues
to wander. And there's certain things that Chris and I can do as realtors to help safeguard to an extent. You know, we can take backup offers. We're there to help coach you through and really handle any potential pitfalls. But you can't just stress yourself out about all of the, you know, things that could happen, right?
Right. And one of the things that could happen, and we talked about this on the buyer side, is what if they find things wrong with my house?
Yeah, and they will. Right? Yeah.
Just it's a matter of what and how serious, and you know, having that expectation. But know that they will find things wrong with the house if they have an inspection, and that's okay.
That's okay, and it's really just about the steps and taking it one step at a time. Don't bite off more than you can chew and over anticipate, but when it happens, we find a way to work through it, right?
Definitely. Right. And what's our last?
I really think it's just, again, that lack of control on the seller side also, that there's so many things that are coming at them and expected of them that they don't have control over. The timeline for one, the things that may come up on the inspection or another, the whole fact that you know, the lending process is happening out of their control and they don't know, you know, what's happening on that end. So it's just, I think, a lack of timeline control.
Yeah, you know, and even last week I was thinking about it when we were talking about appraisals. You know, you used to have this, okay, here's the inspection, this happens, the next step is the appraiser shows up. Well, now they're not even showing up. And so again, what that does is creates that little bit lack of control.
Yeah.
So the solution to all of this is very easy. Certainly, we're all going to breathe. That's 2 breaths in and a long breath out. You don't have to cry
Let's
to do
some
it.
breathing exercises, Chris. Inhale.
But the other part is really to hire a professional.
Right. So when Chris and I go out on a buyer consult or a seller consult, we're going to sit down with you. We're going to talk timelines. We're going to speak to hypothetical situations. We're going to create a list of things that you need to do, and we're going to set those expectations ahead of time.
Right.
So I think just knowing those things can really help to reduce anxiety. And then of course we've got all of Amy's suggestions, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I think part of being a professional real estate agent is to have the professionalism, to have the processes down, but also to be present for you. And again, that was one of Amy's suggestion, is to be present. Well, you're our clients, and in our businesses, we're going to make sure that we've got the time for you and the focus on you to help you through that transaction.
So we'd love to help, of course, on the buy side, on the sell side. Call Chris or I will help you through all of those steps. And for now, that's, I think, all that we have today.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us for House and Home Chat with Dena and Chris, Real Estate Real Talk. And like and subscribe.
Like, subscribe, share, rate us, comments. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Take care.
Bye.